Samuel Thornton's hands wouldn't stop shaking as he stared at the frozen woman crumpled against his fence post. She looked dead. God help him. She looked exactly like Martha had looked in that final moment, pale, still gone. But then her eyes fluttered open, gray-blue and fierce, even in delirium, and she whispered 3 words that would haunt him for weeks. "I'm not dying." He didn't know it then, but this stranger would either save his sons or destroy what remained of his shattered heart. If you want to know whether a desperate bargain can become something more, stay with me until the very end. Hit subscribe and comment your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The trouble started 3 weeks before Eleanor Mercer collapsed in that Colorado snowstorm, though the seeds had been planted long before that bitter December morning. She'd been a nurse at Mercy Hospital in Lawrence, Kansas, a good one, the kind who held dying soldiers' hands during the war and never flinched, the kind who remembered every patient's name and every family's grief. 8 years she'd given to that hospital, 8 years of blood and tears and midnight prayers. Then Dr. Harrison Caldwell had called her into his office and destroyed everything. "Close the door, Miss Mercer." Ellie had known something was wrong. Caldwell never closed doors. He liked audiences for his pronouncements, like the other nurses, to witness his authority. "Sit down." "I'd rather stand, sir." His eyes had narrowed. "Always so proud. That's your problem, Eleanor. You don't know your place. My place is with my patients. Your place is where I say it is." Caldwell had leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled. "I've had a complaint. Senator Morrison's wife says you were insubordinate during her husband's treatment." Ellie's blood had run cold. She knew exactly what this was about. "Mrs. Morrison asked me to falsify her husband's medical records, to hide certain symptoms from the insurance company. And you refused. I told her the truth, that her husband's condition was caused by his drinking, not by the accident he claimed. Falsifying records is illegal, Dr. Caldwell. It's also wrong." Caldwell had smiled, then the kind of smile that made Ellie's skin crawl. "The Morrisons donate more to this hospital in 1 year than you'll earn in 10. Their son sits on the board. That doesn't change what's right." "No." Caldwell had stood moving to the window. "But it does change your employment status. You're dismissed, Miss Mercer, effective immediately." "You can't." "I can, I have." He hadn't even turned to face her. "I've also taken the liberty of informing other hospitals in the region about your difficulties, your insubordination, your tendency to cause problems." The floor had dropped beneath her feet. "You're blacklisting me. I'm protecting my colleagues from a troublesome employee. You'll find no position in Kansas, Miss Mercer. Perhaps not in any state east of here. I suggest you go west where standards are lower and memories shorter." Ellie had wanted to scream to rage to overturn his precious desk and scatter his papers across the floor. Instead, she'd straightened her spine and walked out with her dignity intact. That dignity had lasted exactly 3 weeks. 3 weeks of searching for work that didn't exist. 3 weeks of landlords demanding rent she couldn't pay. 3 weeks of watching her savings dwindle to nothing while doors slammed in her face. "I'm sorry, miss, but we've had a letter. Concerns about your character. We ain't hiring, especially not women with history. Perhaps try the saloons. They're always looking for girls." That last suggestion had come from a woman spoken with a smirk that made Ellie want to weep. By the time she'd boarded the westbound train with her last dollars, Ellie had stopped counting the rejections. She'd heard there was work in the Colorado Territory ranch families who needed help mining towns desperate for nurses. She'd get off at the first promising stop, find honest work, rebuild her life. The train had broken down 40 miles from Silver Creek. "Axle's cracked," the conductor had announced. "Be 3 days before we can get it fixed, maybe more. There's a town about 15 miles north, Barton's Crossing. You folks can shelter there till we're ready." 15 miles. In good weather, on a good road, Ellie could have walked it in half a day. But the weather wasn't good. The storm that had been threatening all morning broke just as she set out, turning the world white and howling. The other passengers had chosen to stay with the train, huddling in the cars for warmth. Ellie couldn't afford to wait. She had $12 left, barely enough for a week's lodging. Every day of delay was a day closer to starvation. "Miss, you can't go out in this," a young man had protested. "You'll freeze." "I've survived worse." She hadn't actually, but she'd rather die walking than die waiting. The first hour hadn't been too bad. The second hour, her feet had gone numb. By the third hour, she couldn't feel her hands anymore, and the white landscape had begun to blur and shift like a fever dream. She'd lost the road somewhere around midday, or maybe it was afternoon. Time had stopped making sense, and direction had become meaningless. There was only forward one step after another, until forward became sideways, became down. The fence post had appeared out of nowhere, solid and real, in a world of white chaos. Ellie had grabbed it like salvation, clinging to the rough wood as her legs gave out. Just a moment's rest, she'd told herself. Just close my eyes for a second. The cold had stopped hurting. That was nice. Warmth crept through her limbs, gentle and seductive. Her mother's voice drifted through her mind, singing lullabies from childhood. "Rest now, darling. Rest." Ma'am, can you hear me?" The voice came from very far away. Ellie tried to ignore it, tried to sink back into that comfortable darkness, but rough hands were shaking her shoulders. "Lord Almighty, she's half frozen. Hey, can you hear me?" Ellie forced her eyes open. A weathered face swam into view, brown eyes wide with concern beneath a snow-crusted hat. "There you go. Stay with me now." The man's voice was gruff but kind. "What in blazes are you doing out here in this weather?" "Looking for work." Her voice came out slurred, strange. "Ranch work. Heard there was ranches?" "There's ranches, all right. You're on one now, Thornton Ranch. But you're in no shape to be looking for work or anything else." The man pulled her upright with surprising gentleness. "Can you walk?" "My horse ain't far." I can walk." She couldn't really, but the man he introduced himself as Jake the ranch foreman half carried her to his horse and somehow got her mounted. The ride to the main house passed in a blur of white and cold and the steady rhythm of hooves. Then there was warmth. Blessed, impossible warmth. Ellie found herself in a kitchen that smelled of bread and wood smoke, wrapped in blankets, while a stout black woman with gray-streaked hair pressed a cup of hot cider into her frozen hands. "Slowly, child. Sip it slow, or you'll be sick." "Thank you." Ellie's teeth chattered against the cup. "Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet. Jake's gone to fetch the master, and Samuel Thornton ain't known for his charitable disposition." The woman's voice was matter-of-fact, but not unkind. "I'm Harriet. Most call me Hattie. You got a name?" "Eleanor. Ellie Mercer." "Well, Eleanor Ellie Mercer, you picked a hell of a day to come calling." Before Ellie could respond, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Heavy, deliberate footsteps that spoke of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Samuel Thornton filled the kitchen doorway like a thundercloud. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and work-roughened hands. His hair was dark, streaked with early gray at the temples, and his eyes brown deep-set, hard swept over Ellie with the assessing gaze of a man evaluating livestock. This is her," Hattie confirmed. "Miss Eleanor Mercer. Jake found her collapsed at the north fence." "Miss Mercer." Thornton's voice was flat empty of warmth. "Jake says you were looking for work." Ellie forced herself to straighten, despite the trembling in her limbs. "Yes, sir. Ranch work, household work, nursing. I'm trained as a nurse. I can cook, clean, tend to sick animals or sick people. I'm not afraid of hard labor." "Where are you from?" "Kansas. Lawrence." "Long way from home. Why'd you leave?" Ellie hesitated. She could lie, spin some story about family obligations or wanderlust, but something in Thornton's gaze told her he'd see through it. I was dismissed from my position. The hospital administrator didn't appreciate my honesty. Meaning I refused to falsify medical records for a wealthy patient. He had me blacklisted. Couldn't find work anywhere in Kansas, so I headed west. Thornton studied her for a long moment. Jake says you nearly died walking here. The train broke down. I couldn't afford to wait. Couldn't afford. His eyes flicked to her single carpet bag, to her worn dress, to the threadbare gloves she still clutched. You have no money. I have $12, which is no money. Thornton turned to Hattie. Feed her. Let her warm up. Then she leaves. Sam! This isn't a charity, Hattie. I've got 3 boys to raise and a ranch to run. I don't need another mouth to feed. He was leaving. Walking away. Ellie watched her last hope disappearing through that doorway, and something inside her snapped. Mr. Thornton. He paused, but didn't turn. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for honest work in exchange for honest wages. If you've got nothing available, fine. But at least do me the courtesy of saying so to my face. Slowly, Thornton turned. Something flickered in those hard eyes, surprise maybe, or grudging respect. You've got spine, I'll give you that. Spine is all I've got left. That and the willingness to work until I drop. Thornton was silent for a long moment. Then unexpectedly he pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. Tell me about this hospital situation, all of it. So Ellie told him. About Dr. Caldwell and Senator Morrison, about the blacklist and the slammed doors, about the train and the storm, and the desperate, foolish decision to walk. Thornton listened without interruption. When she finished, he drummed his fingers on the table once, twice. You could have lied. Made up a story about a sick relative or wanting adventure out west. I don't lie, Mr. Thornton. I won't say it's never tempting, but I don't do it. Even when it costs you everything. Especially then, lies are easy. Living with them isn't. Thornton's jaw tightened. He stood abruptly and walked to the window, his back to her. I have 3 sons. Tommy's 10, Will's 7, Ben's 4. Their mother died 4 years ago. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be useful. He turned, and Ellie saw something new in his expression. Calculation decision. Something that made her pulse quicken with unease. My boys need a mother. I've been managing with Hattie's help, but it's not enough. Tommy's too serious, carries too much weight for a child. Will's nervous and withdrawn. Ben barely remembers what a mother is. Ellie's throat tightened. Mr. Thornton. I'm proposing marriage, Miss Mercer. The words fell like stones into still water. I beg your pardon. You heard me. Thornton's voice remained flat, businesslike. Not a love match. I'm not interested in romance, and I'm guessing you aren't either at this point. A practical arrangement. You'll have food shelter protection. My boys will have stability. You'll be Mrs. Thornton in name and in public, but our private arrangements are our own business. Ellie stared at him. You're asking me to marry you. A stranger you met 10 minutes ago. I'm offering you survival. Winter's just started. You've got no money, no connections, no prospects. Walk out that door and you'll be dead within a week, if not from cold, then from starvation or worse. Thornton crossed his arms. I'm offering you life. Whether you take it is up to you. And your sons, you'd thrust a complete stranger into their lives as their mother. I'd give them someone to fill the gap I can't fill, someone to teach them, nurture them, give them what I don't know how to give anymore. The raw honesty of that admission struck Ellie harder than anything else he'd said. You love them. More than anything in this world, which is why I'm standing here offering marriage to a woman I don't know because it's the best thing I can do for them. Thornton's voice roughened. I failed their mother. I won't fail them. How did she die? The question slipped out before Ellie could stop it. Thornton's face shuddered. Childbirth. Ben nearly died too. The doctor said there was nothing to be done, but... He stopped. It doesn't matter. What matters is my boys need a mother, and you need a home. We can help each other. Ellie's mind raced. This was madness. Marry a stranger. Become mother to 3 children she'd never met. Bind herself to a man who'd made clear he had no interest in her, as anything but a useful tool. But the alternative was death. Real cold, permanent death. If I agree, she said slowly, what exactly would be expected of me? Run the household. Hattie manages the day-to-day, but she needs direction. She was never meant to be the mistress of this house. Educate the boys. I understand you're lettered, can read and write. See to their health, their development. Be their mother in every way that matters. And you? What about me? What will our arrangement look like? You said we'd be married in name. Thornton's jaw tightened. You'll have your own room. I won't touch you without invitation. In public, we present ourselves as husband and wife. In private, we're partners. Nothing more, nothing less. Partners. The word sat strangely in Ellie's chest. And if I want to leave? Commit to 1 year. That's all I ask. 1 year to let the boys adjust and to prove the arrangement is sustainable. After that, if you want out, I'll provide you with funds to establish yourself elsewhere, a year's wages for a nurse, and a letter of reference that will open any door you choose. And if I want to leave before the year is up, you're free to go, but the financial arrangement only applies after the full year. Thornton's eyes held hers. I'm not trying to trap you, Miss Mercer. I'm trying to make this worth your while. Ellie looked around the warm kitchen, at Hattie's worried face, at the snow still howling outside the windows. She thought about the cold, about the emptiness of her carpet bag, about the $12 that wouldn't last a week. She thought about 3 motherless boys who needed someone. I want your word, she said, that you'll never raise a hand to me no matter what, that I'll be treated with respect. You have it. I'm not a gentle man, but I'm not a brute. And the boys, I'll need your support in raising them. I can't be undermined. In matters of the children, we present a united front. Always. Ellie took a deep breath. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Survive, Eleanor. Whatever it takes, survive. Then we have an agreement, Mr. Thornton. Something shifted in his expression. Relief maybe, or calculation satisfied. He extended his hand. Samuel, if we're to be married, you should use my given name. Ellie took his hand. His grip was firm, calloused, warm. Ellie. The circuit judge comes through in 3 days. We'll marry then. Samuel released her hand and stepped back. Hattie will show you to a guest room. Tomorrow you'll meet the boys. He was at the door when Ellie spoke again. Samuel. He paused. Thank you. For the chance. Don't thank me yet. His voice was quiet. You haven't met my sons. Then he was gone, leaving Ellie alone with Hattie and the magnitude of what she'd just agreed to. Well now. Hattie's voice was carefully neutral. That was unexpected. Is he always like that cold, I mean? Businesslike. Samuel Thornton wasn't always cold. Used to be he was the warmest man in the territory. Martha, that was his wife, used to say he had sunshine in his soul. Hattie began cleaning up the cider cups. When she died, the sunshine died with her. He's been frozen ever since. 4 years is a long time to grieve. For some folks, there ain't enough time in the world. Samuel loved Martha the way poets write about complete consuming. Losing her broke something in him that hasn't healed. Ellie absorbed this. And the boys, tell me about them. Hattie's expression softened. Tommy's the oldest. 10 years old going on 40. That boy carries the weight of the world, thinks he has to be the man of the house since his mama passed. Too serious, too careful, won't let himself be a child. And the others. Will's 7, sweet as honey, but nervous as a cat in a rainstorm. Worries about everything, poor lamb. And Ben's 4 and pure sunshine, just like his papa used to be. Curious about everything, loves everyone, too young to remember Martha at all. They'll be wary of me. Tommy will. That boy's been burned before women from town coming around trying to catch Samuel's eye. He sees through them like glass. Hattie fixed Ellie with a penetrating gaze. Question is, what will he see when he looks at you? I don't know, Ellie admitted. I've never been a mother, never even thought I'd marry after... She stopped. Hattie waited. There was someone once, during the war, a soldier I nursed back from the brink. We had plans, or I thought we did. Ellie's voice hardened. He went home to his real fiancée, the one he'd neglected to mention. Ah, Hattie nodded slowly. So you know something about broken hearts. I know something about survival, which is what this is, survival, not romance. You keep telling yourself that, child. Hattie's voice held a strange note. But I've seen how Samuel looked at you when you talked back to him. First time in 4 years I've seen anything but ice in that man's eyes. Ellie didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. That night in a guest room finer than any she'd ever slept in, Ellie lay awake watching the snow fall outside her window. In 3 days, she would be Mrs. Samuel Thornton, mother to 3 boys she'd never met, mistress of a house that still echoed with a dead woman's memory. The absurdity of it should have made her weep. Instead, she found herself thinking about Tommy, the 10-year-old, who'd been forced to grow up too fast, who carried weight no child should carry. She thought about Will, nervous and withdrawn. About Ben, who didn't know what a mother was. They needed someone. Not just someone to cook and clean and manage a household, they needed someone to see them, to truly see them as children with needs and fears and hopes. Could she be that someone I don't know? She admitted to herself. But I'm going to try. Because surviving wasn't just about breathing, it was about living. And maybe, just maybe, helping those boys learn to live again was exactly what Ellie needed to learn herself. Morning came cold and bright. Ellie dressed in her better dress, still worn, still inadequate, and went downstairs with her heart in her throat. She could hear them before she saw them. A child's high laughter, a deeper voice scolding the clatter of dishes. Ben, sit down. You're going to spill too late. Sorry, Tommy. You're always sorry. Just sit still for once. Ellie paused at the kitchen doorway, taking in the scene. 3 boys sat at a worn wooden table. The oldest, Tommy, had his father's dark hair and a face too serious for his age. He was mopping up spilled milk with the resigned efficiency of long practice. Beside him, a younger boy with brown hair and anxious eyes watched with obvious distress. And at the end of the table, practically vibrating with energy, sat the youngest. Ben had blonde hair and bright eyes and a grin that could light up a room. Pa said there's a lady staying with us, Ben announced. Is she pretty? I bet she's pretty. It doesn't matter if she's pretty, Tommy said flatly. She'll leave like all the others. Maybe this one won't. They always leave. The bitterness in that young voice made Ellie's heart ache. She stepped into the doorway. Good morning. 3 heads swung toward her. Ben's face lit up. Will shrank back slightly. And Tommy looked at her with eyes that held far too much knowledge for a 10-year-old. You're the lady, Ben said, bouncing in his seat. Pa said you got lost in the snow and almost died. Ben. Tommy's voice was sharp. Don't be rude. It's all right. Ellie moved into the kitchen slowly, the way she might approach a skittish horse. Your father's right, I did get lost and it was very scary. But I'm fine now, thanks to Mr. Jake and Hattie. Are you going to be our new The question hit like a slap. Ellie saw Tommy's face close down, saw Will's eyes widen with something between hope and terror. Before she could answer, Samuel's voice came from behind her. Boys, this is Miss Mercer, Miss Eleanor Mercer. She's going to be staying with us. He moved past Ellie to stand at the head of the table, his presence commanding immediate attention. In 3 days, Miss Mercer and I will be married. She'll be your stepmother. Silence. Absolute ringing silence. Then Tommy stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. No. Tommy. You can't replace Ma. You can't just bring in some stranger and say she's our mother now. I'm not replacing your mother. No one could ever... Then why is she here? Tommy's voice cracked. Why do we need her? We were fine before. We don't need anyone else. He ran. Before Samuel could react, before Ellie could speak, the boy was gone, the kitchen door slamming behind him. Tommy! Will half rose from his seat, torn between following his brother and staying put. Let him go. Samuel's voice was tight. He needs to cool down. Papa! Ben's small voice was confused, his earlier excitement deflated. Did I make Tommy mad? No, son. Tommy's just... He needs time. Ellie watched Samuel's face, saw the pain he was trying to hide. This wasn't just about bringing in a new wife. This was about a family still raw with grief wounds that hadn't healed. May I speak with him? She asked quietly. Samuel's eyes snapped to hers. You. I know I'm a stranger. But sometimes strangers can say things family can't. For a long moment, Samuel just looked at her. Then he nodded once. He'll be in the barn, with the horses. That's where he always goes. Ellie didn't hesitate. She grabbed her coat from the hook by the door and stepped out into the bright, cold morning. The barn was massive, red-painted, and solid against the snow. Ellie pushed open the heavy door and stepped into the warm dimness, hay-scented and peaceful. She found Tommy in the last stall, arms wrapped around a chestnut mare's neck, his face buried in her mane. Go away. I'm not very good at following orders. I said go away. I don't want to talk to you. Ellie leaned against the stall door, but didn't enter. That's all right. You don't have to talk, but I'd like to say something if you'll let me. Silence. The horse nickered softly. I'm not here to replace your mother. I couldn't even if I wanted to, and I don't want to. She was your mother. She loved you and you loved her. That's sacred. That belongs to you forever. Tommy's shoulders trembled, but he didn't turn. I'm here because I need a home, and you boys need someone. Not to replace what you had to add to it. Like... Ellie searched for the right words. Like a garden. You don't rip out the flowers that are already there to plant new ones. You just make more room. That's stupid. Maybe. I've never been very good with metaphors. A reluctant snort escaped the boy. Not quite a laugh, but close. I know you're angry. You have every right to be some stranger showing up and your father telling you she's going to be your mother now. I'd be angry too. Tommy finally turned. His eyes were red-rimmed but dry. He'd been fighting tears, refusing to let them fall. You don't know anything about us. You're right, I don't. Ellie held his gaze. But I'd like to learn. If you'll teach me. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. Not yet. Trust has to be earned, and I haven't earned anything. Ellie took a breath. But here's what I can promise: I won't pretend to be something I'm not. I won't lie to you, and I won't leave without warning. Everyone leaves. The words were so quiet, so broken, that Ellie felt them like a knife in her chest. Your mother didn't leave because she wanted to. She left because she had no choice. That's not the same thing. Tommy's face crumpled. Just for a moment, he looked like what he was, a scared little boy who'd lost his mother and built walls to protect himself from ever hurting that badly again. I miss her, he whispered. I miss her so much, and I'm scared I'm going to forget her. Her voice is already fading. Sometimes I can't remember what she sounded like. Ellie's eyes burned with unshed tears. She stepped into the stall, moving slowly, and knelt in the hay so she was at Tommy's level. Tell me about her. What do you remember? She smelled like lavender. She used to sing while she cooked. Her voice wasn't very good, but she sang anyway. She called me her little man, even when I told her I was too old for that. What else? She made the best apple pie in the whole territory, and she'd let me stay up late sometimes, just me and her, and we'd look at the stars, and she'd tell me stories about the constellations. She sounds wonderful. She was. Tommy's voice broke. She was the best mother in the whole world, and now she's gone, and Pa wants to pretend you can just replace her. I don't think that's what he wants. Ellie spoke gently. I think he knows you and your brothers need things he can't give you. Not because he doesn't love you, he loves you more than anything. But sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes you need different kinds of love from different people. Tommy wiped his nose with his sleeve. He never cries, not once since she died. It's like he doesn't even miss her. Oh, Tommy. Ellie's heart broke for this boy. Your father misses her so much it's eating him alive. Some people, when they hurt that badly, they can't show it. They lock it all up inside because they're afraid if they let even a little bit out, they'll fall apart completely. How do you know? Because I've done the same thing. When my mother died, when my father followed a few years later, I didn't cry. Not once. People thought I was cold heartless. But I was just surviving, one breath at a time. Tommy studied her with those two old eyes. Did you ever cry? Later. Eventually. When I was ready. When I felt safe enough. The boy was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprising them both, he reached out and took her hand. I don't like you yet, he said. That's fair. But maybe I could try to not hate you. Ellie squeezed his hand gently. That's all I ask. They sat there in the hay-scented warmth, boy and stranger, while outside the winter sun climbed higher and the ranch came to life around them. It wasn't trust, not yet. It wasn't acceptance. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, Ellie thought beginnings were all you needed. The wedding took place 3 days later, just as Samuel had promised. Judge Whitmore arrived at noon, a portly man with shrewd eyes who'd clearly performed this duty dozens of times before. He didn't ask questions about the hasty arrangement, didn't raise an eyebrow at the bride's worn dress or the groom's stiff posture. In the Colorado Territory, marriages of convenience were as common as snowstorms. Ellie stood in Samuel's study wearing the best dress she owned, the same blue wool she'd worn when she'd arrived, now cleaned and pressed by Hattie's careful hands. Her hair was pinned up neatly, her face pale but composed. Samuel stood across from her in a dark suit that made him look even more severe. His expression gave nothing away. The boys watched from the doorway. Ben bounced with excitement, unable to contain himself. Will clutched Tommy's hand, his small face tight with anxiety. And Tommy. Tommy stood straight and still, his eyes fixed on Ellie with an expression she couldn't read. Dearly beloved, Judge Whitmore began, his voice professionally neutral. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Samuel Josiah Thornton and Eleanor Catherine Mercer in the bonds of holy matrimony. Holy matrimony. Ellie nearly laughed at the irony. There was nothing holy about this arrangement. It was pure survival, a transaction dressed in ceremony. Do you, Samuel Josiah Thornton, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health until death do you part? I do. Samuel's voice was flat, emotionless. And do you, Eleanor Catherine Mercer, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health until death do you part? Ellie's throat tightened. This was it, the moment of no return. She thought of the cold, of the empty road, of the $12 that wouldn't have lasted a week. I do. The ring. Samuel produced a simple gold band from his pocket. He took Ellie's left hand, his touch impersonal, clinical, and slid the ring onto her finger. It was slightly loose, spinning when she moved. By the power vested in me by the territory of Colorado, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Judge Whitmore snapped his book shut. You may kiss the bride. The silence stretched. Ellie's heart hammered against her ribs. They hadn't discussed this part. Samuel's jaw tightened. Then he leaned forward and pressed a brief, dry kiss to her forehead, the kind of kiss you might give a distant relative. Congratulations, Judge Whitmore said, already reaching for his coat. Hattie, Jake, if you'll sign as witnesses. The paperwork was completed in minutes. The judge accepted his payment, declined lunch, and was gone before Ellie had fully processed what had happened. She was married, Mrs. Samuel Thornton. The name felt foreign, like a costume that didn't quite fit. Is it done? Ben's voice broke the silence. "Is Miss Ellie our mama now?" Samuel's expression flickered. "Yes, Ben. Miss Ellie, Mrs. Thornton is your stepmother now." Ben launched himself across the room and wrapped his arms around Ellie's waist. "I have a mama, Tommy. Will we have a mama?" Over his head, Ellie met Tommy's eyes. The boy's face was carefully blank, but she could see the war raging behind his expression, hope and fear and resentment all tangled together. "Tommy," Samuel's voice was sharp, "come greet your stepmother properly." "It's all right," Ellie said quickly. "He doesn't have to." "He does. This is our family now. We act like one." Tommy's jaw set in a way that reminded Ellie powerfully of his father. He walked forward, stiff as a soldier, and extended his hand. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Thornton." The formality of it broke Ellie's heart. This boy forced to accept a stranger as his mother putting on a brave face because his father demanded it. She took his hand gently. "Thank you, Tommy. I'll try to be worthy of that welcome." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise maybe that she hadn't forced a hug or demanded more than he could give. Will hung back his small fingers twisting in his shirt. Ellie approached him slowly. "Hello, Will. Your father's told me you like to read." Will's eyes widened. "He did. He said you're the smartest 7-year-old in the territory. Is that true?" A tiny smile tugged at Will's mouth. "I don't know about the whole territory, but I can read chapter books now. Real ones with no pictures." "That's impressive. Maybe you could read to me sometime. I love stories." Will glanced at Tommy as if seeking permission. Tommy gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Maybe," Will said quietly. "If you want." It wasn't much, but it was something. The first weeks were harder than Ellie had imagined. Running a household this size was nothing like keeping a small apartment in Lawrence. There were menus to plan supplies to order, schedules to maintain. Hattie handled most of the actual work, but she made clear that the decisions now fell to Ellie. "You're the mistress here now. That means you give the orders. I'll execute them, but I won't make them for you." "I don't know what I'm doing," Ellie admitted. "I've never run a household." "Then you'll learn. Mrs. Thornton the first. Mrs. Thornton didn't know either when she arrived. She learned by doing. So will you." The first Mrs. Thornton, Martha. Her presence haunted every room of this house. Ellie found her in the pressed flowers, still tucked in kitchen drawers, in the embroidered samplers on the walls, in the way Ben sometimes called out Mama, in his sleep reaching for someone who would never come. But she found her most powerfully in Samuel's locked bedroom, the master chamber that remained sealed untouched since Martha's death. "The master sleeps in the study most nights," Hattie explained. "Can't bring himself to enter that room, but can't bear to change it either. Grief does strange things to people. Where am I to sleep? The mistress's chambers are yours. They connect to the master bedroom through a sitting room, but that door stays locked. You'll have privacy enough." The mistress's chambers, Martha's chambers. Ellie entered them with trepidation, half expecting to feel like an intruder. But the room was practical rather than personal, a comfortable bed, a wardrobe, a washstand. If Martha's spirit lingered here, she kept quiet about it. The real challenge wasn't the household, it was the children. Ben was the easiest. At 4, he accepted Ellie's presence with uncomplicated joy, climbing into her lap for stories, bringing her treasures from his adventures, interesting rocks, bird feathers, a particularly impressive pine cone. "Mama, look what I found." He called her Mama without hesitation, without the weight of memory that burdened his brothers. To Ben, a mother was simply someone who loved you and took care of you. Ellie fit that definition well enough. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Where did you find it?" "By the creek Jake showed me. Can we keep it?" "We can absolutely keep it." Will was more complicated. He watched Ellie with anxious eyes, clearly wanting to trust her, but afraid to. He startled at loud noises, flinched at raised voices, seemed constantly braced for disappointment. "What's wrong, Will?" Ellie asked one afternoon, finding him huddled in the library with a book he wasn't reading. Nothing. You look worried. Will's lower lip trembled. Tommy says you're going to leave, that you're just like the others. What others? The ladies from town. They came to visit Papa sometimes. They brought us presents and smiled a lot, but Tommy said they just wanted Papa's money. He said they didn't really care about us. Ellie's heart ached. How many women had paraded through here trying to catch the wealthy widower's eye? How many times had these boys been disappointed? Tommy's smart to be careful, she said. People don't always mean what they say. But Will, I'm going to tell you something true. I didn't come here for your father's money. I came here because I was desperate and afraid and had nowhere else to go. Will's eyes widened. You were scared. Terrified. I'd lost my job, lost my home, had no money and no friends. When the storm hit, I thought I was going to die. Ellie swallowed hard. Your father saved my life. This arrangement we have, it's not about love or money. It's about survival. I needed a home. You boys needed a mother. We're helping each other. That sounds sad. Maybe. Or maybe it's just honest. Sometimes the best things start from honest places, even if they're not pretty. Will was quiet for a long moment. Then very softly. I'm glad you didn't die in the storm. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Tommy remained the holdout. He was civil, his father demanded that much, but distant. He answered Ellie's questions in monosyllables, avoided her company when possible, and watched her with those two old eyes that seemed to see everything. But he also watched her with his brothers. Ellie caught him lurking in doorways when she read to Ben, noted how he hovered nearby when she helped Will with his letters. He was waiting for something, waiting for her to show her true colors, to prove she was just like all the others. She didn't push. She simply kept being present, kept being consistent, kept treating all three boys with the same patient attention. 2 weeks into the marriage, something shifted. Will had come down with a fever. Nothing serious. Ellie's trained eye told her, but frightening to a child. He'd woken in the night crying for his mother, and Ellie had gone to him without thinking, the way she'd gone to countless patients during the war. She'd bathed his forehead with cool cloths, given him water, sung soft lullabies until his tears subsided. You're going to be fine, she'd promised. It's just a fever. It'll break by morning. You won't leave. I'm not going anywhere. She'd stayed all night dozing in a chair beside his bed, waking every hour to check on him. By dawn, his fever had broken just as she'd predicted. Tommy found her there when he came to check on his brother. Is he? He's fine. Fever broke an hour ago. He's sleeping normally now. Tommy stared at her rumpled dress, her tired eyes, the damp cloths still piled on the nightstand. You stayed all night. Of course I did. The other ladies wouldn't have. They would have called for Hattie or just waited for it to pass. I'm a nurse, Tommy, trained during the war. Sitting with sick people is what I do. Something cracked in the boy's careful composure. You were a nurse in the war. Field hospitals mostly. I was 17 when it started. By the time it ended, I'd seen more death than anyone should see in a lifetime. Ellie met his eyes. That's why I don't take fevers lightly. Even small ones can turn dangerous if you don't watch them. Tommy was quiet. Then, unexpectedly, he sat down on the edge of Will's bed. Ma died from a fever. After Ben was born. The doctor said it was childbed fever, that there was nothing anyone could have done, but... His voice caught. Pa still blames himself. He thinks if he'd gotten the doctor sooner or done something different. Childbed fever is cruel. It comes fast and kills faster. No one could have saved your mother, Tommy. It wasn't your father's fault, and it wasn't yours. I wasn't even here when she died. Pa sent us to the Hendersons' ranch because he didn't want us to see. By the time we came back, she was already... Tommy's hands clenched in his lap. I didn't get to say goodbye. Ellie's throat tightened. This boy carrying grief and guilt and anger for 4 years, blaming himself for something entirely beyond his control. "Can I tell you something?" she asked quietly. Tommy nodded. "I wasn't there when my mother died either. I was at the hospital working a night shift. My father sent word, but by the time I got home, she was gone." Ellie took a breath. "I hated myself for years. Told myself if I'd just been there, if I'd just done something different, maybe she would have lived. It took me a long time to understand that guilt and love aren't the same thing, even when they feel identical." Tommy looked at her with wet eyes. "Does it get better?" "The missing them. The missing never stops, but it changes. It stops being a knife and becomes more like an old ache. Something you carry, but something you can live with." Will stirred in his sleep, and both of them fell silent, watching his peaceful face. "You really stayed all night," Tommy said finally. It wasn't a question this time, it was an acknowledgement. "I really did." Why? Because he needed someone. Because that's what mothers do. The word hung between them. Mother. Such a small word to carry so much weight. Tommy stood abruptly. "I'm going to check on Ben. He gets scared when Will's sick." "That's very responsible of you." At the door, Tommy paused. "Mrs. Thornton." "Yes?" "Thank you for staying with him." He was gone before she could respond. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even acceptance, not really. But it was something, a crack in the wall Tommy had built around himself. Ellie would take it. Samuel observed these developments from a distance. He was a man who worked dawn to dusk, burying himself in ranch operations to avoid the uncomfortable reality of his new domestic situation. He took meals with the family Ellie had insisted on that much, but conversation was sparse. "How are the cattle?" Ellie would ask. "Fine. The weather's been mild. For now. The boys did well with their lessons today." "Good." It was like talking to a wall, a handsome, stubborn, grieving wall. 3 weeks into the marriage, Ellie had had enough. She found him in his study after the boys were in bed, bent over paperwork by lamplight. "We need to talk." Samuel looked up. About the fact that you've spoken maybe 50 words to me since the wedding, and half of them were fine and good." His jaw tightened. "I've been busy." "You've been avoiding me." Ellie crossed her arms. "I understand this arrangement isn't what either of us would have chosen under different circumstances. But I'm trying, Samuel. I'm trying to be a mother to your boys, trying to run your household, trying to make this work. The least you could do is meet me halfway. I'm giving you everything you need. Food, shelter, the freedom to manage the household as you see fit. What more do you want? I want a partner, not a ghost. You come and go like a shadow, barely acknowledging the boys, except to correct them. Ben asks me every day why Papa never plays with him anymore. Will jumps at your footsteps like you're a stranger. And Tommy's trying so hard to be the father you won't be that he's forgotten how to be a child." Samuel's face went white, then red. "You don't know anything about my relationship with my sons." "I know what I see, and what I see is 3 boys who love their father and don't understand why he's disappeared behind a wall of work and silence. That's enough." "It's not nearly enough." Ellie stepped closer, refusing to be intimidated. "You hired me to be their mother. Fine, but mothers don't raise children alone. They need fathers too. Present fathers. Fathers who show up." Samuel stood so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor. "You want to know why I stay away? Because every time I look at them I see her. Ben has her smile. Will has her worrying nature. Tommy has her stubbornness. And I can't—" his voice cracked. "I can't look at them without remembering what I lost, what they lost. So I stay busy, I stay distant because it's the only way I know how to survive." The confession hung in the air between them, raw and bleeding. "Oh, Samuel." Ellie's anger dissolved into something softer. "Hiding from your grief doesn't make it smaller. It just makes you smaller. And what would you know about it? I know about loss. I know about building walls. I know about running away from pain instead of through it. She took a breath. I also know that your boys are right here, right now, alive and growing and needing their father. Martha is gone, and I'm sorry for that, truly sorry. But they're still here. Don't miss their childhoods because you're too busy mourning what you can't change. Samuel stared at her. In the lamplight, his face looked older than his years, carved by grief into something hard and lonely. You talk too much, he said finally. And you don't talk enough. Perhaps we balance each other out. Against all odds, a ghost of a smile flickered across his face. Perhaps. It was the first genuine expression she'd seen from him. Ellie filed it away like a small treasure. Tomorrow, she said, you're going to have breakfast with the boys. A real breakfast where you ask them questions and listen to the answers. And this weekend, you're going to take Ben riding like you promised him 3 weeks ago. I didn't promise. He's been asking every day. He's 4 years old, Samuel. He doesn't understand why his father suddenly stopped spending time with him. All he knows is that he misses you. Samuel's shoulders slumped. I don't know how to do this. How to be present. You learn. One conversation at a time, one meal at a time, one ride at a time. That's how any of us learn anything. And you'll be there to help. The vulnerability in his voice surprised her. This wasn't the cold, commanding rancher who'd proposed marriage like a business transaction. This was a man utterly lost, reaching out for something to hold on to. I'll be there, Ellie promised. That's what partners do. Samuel nodded slowly. Partners. I suppose we are that. We are. Ellie moved toward the door, then paused. Samuel. For what it's worth, I think Martha would want you to live. Really live, not just exist. She loved you. She wouldn't want you to spend the rest of your life haunted by her ghost. How can you possibly know what she would have wanted? Because that's what love is. Wanting the best for someone even when you can't be there to give it to them. Ellie met his eyes. Good night, Samuel. She left him standing in his study lamplight, flickering over his troubled face. The next morning, Samuel came to breakfast. Not just appeared and ate in silence, but actually came. He sat at the head of the table and asked Ben about his adventures. He listened to Will describe the book he was reading. He even engaged Tommy in a conversation about the horses. The boys were startled at first, wary, as if waiting for the illusion to shatter. But as the meal progressed, as Samuel kept asking questions and kept listening, something in them began to ease. Papa, can we really go riding this weekend? Ben asked, hardly daring to hope. We can really go riding, I promise. Ben's face lit up like Christmas morning. He launched himself at his father, nearly knocking over the milk, and Samuel caught him with an expression that made Ellie's heart twist, surprise and joy, and something that looked almost like pain. I love you, Papa. I love you too, son, more than you know. Over Ben's head, Samuel's eyes found Ellie's. He nodded once. Gratitude, acknowledgement, something that felt like the beginning of respect. It wasn't much, but it was more than yesterday. That weekend, Ellie watched from the porch as Samuel led Ben around the corral on a patient old mare. Ben's laughter rang across the snowy fields, pure and bright. Tommy and Will watched too, their expressions complicated. He hasn't done that since Ma died, Tommy said quietly. Taken time just to be with us. People change, Ellie said. Sometimes they just need someone to remind them who they used to be. Tommy was silent for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, maybe you're not so bad. For a stranger. But, coming from Tommy, it was practically a declaration of love. Maybe you're not so bad either, Ellie replied. For a stubborn 10-year-old. The corner of Tommy's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Progress. Slow, painful, precious progress. The days began to blur together in a rhythm that felt almost comfortable. Lessons in the morning, Ellie discovered that teaching came as naturally as breathing ranch work, for Samuel household management, for Ellie afternoons filled with the chaos of 3 growing boys. Ben continued to call her Mama without hesitation. Will had started coming to her with his worries, trusting her enough to share his fears. And Tommy had stopped watching her like she might suddenly reveal herself as an enemy. Samuel, too, was changing. He still buried himself in work, but he emerged more often now. He joined family meals, helped with bedtime, even laughed occasionally at Ben's endless jokes. "Why did the Scarecrow win an award?" Ben demanded one evening. "I don't know." "Why?" "Because he was outstanding in his field." It wasn't a good joke. It was barely even a joke. But Samuel laughed, a real laugh, rusty from disuse but genuine, and Ben glowed with pride. These are the moments that matter, Ellie thought. Not grand gestures, but small connections built slowly over time. A month into the marriage, Ellie found herself in the library late one evening, unable to sleep. She'd developed a habit of reading by firelight when restlessness struck, losing herself in books the way she always had. Samuel found her there. "You're up late." "So are you." He crossed to the fire and stood with his back to her, warming his hands. "I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about things. Things. The boys, the ranch, this arrangement we have." He turned to face her. "You've changed this household, Ellie. In barely a month, you've changed everything. I've just been doing what we agreed." "No, you've done more than that." Samuel's voice was rough. "You've brought life back into this house. Laughter. The boys are different, happier. Even Hattie says she hasn't seen them this content since Martha." He trailed off, but Ellie understood. "They're good boys. They just needed someone to see them." "They needed a mother. They got one." Samuel took a step closer. "I'm beginning to think I might have gotten more than I bargained for." "Is that good or bad?" "I don't know yet." His eyes searched her face. "You're nothing like I expected, Eleanor Mercer." "Ellie. Ellie." He said her name like he was tasting it. "I expected someone desperate and compliant. Someone who'd take what I offered and ask no questions. And instead you got someone who argues with you and tells you how to raise your children." "Yes." The corner of his mouth lifted. "It's infuriating. Would you prefer if I stopped?" "God, no." He said it quickly, almost without thinking. "The truth is, Ellie, I'd forgotten what it felt like to be challenged, to be seen. Martha used to see right through me, used to call me out when I was being an idiot. After she died, everyone just let me be cold. Let me hide. You don't let me hide. You have too much to offer to spend your life hiding." The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither of them was ready to examine. "I should let you read," Samuel said finally. "I just wanted to say thank you for what you've done for my family. Our family." He paused at the door, something flickering in his eyes. "Our family. Yes, I suppose it is." Then he was gone, leaving Ellie with her book and her racing heart and the unsettling realization that somewhere along the way, this cold arrangement had begun to feel like something warmer. She thought about that conversation for days. Our family. The words kept echoing in her mind. When had she stopped thinking of this as Samuel's household and started thinking of it as her own? When had these 3 boys become her sons instead of her charges? She didn't have answers. But she had feelings, complicated, terrifying feelings that she hadn't expected and didn't know what to do with. 6 weeks into the marriage, winter began to loosen its grip. The snow started to melt, revealing brown grass beneath. The creek that ran through the property swelled with runoff. The ranch hands began preparing for spring calving, and the whole property hummed with activity. Ellie barely noticed. She was too busy preparing for the county social, the first public event she'd attend as Mrs. Samuel Thornton. "You'll need a proper dress," Hattie declared. "Can't have the mistress of Thornton Ranch showing up in worn cotton." "I have nothing else." "Then we'll fix that. Mrs. Thornton, the first Mrs. Thornton, left a whole wardrobe of dresses. They've been in storage, but there's no reason you can't wear them." Ellie froze. "I couldn't. They're not mine." "They're nobody's now. And they're too fine to gather dust forever. Hattie's voice gentled. Mrs. Thornton would have wanted them used. She was practical that way. The green silk dress fit almost perfectly. Ellie stared at herself in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. The color brought out hints of green in her gray eyes. The cut emphasized her slender waist. She looked almost pretty, something she hadn't thought about herself in years. Mama! Ben burst into her room without knocking. You look like a princess. I do not. You do. Papa's going to think you're the prettiest lady at the whole party. Ellie's cheeks warmed. I doubt your father will even notice. But when she descended the stairs, Samuel was waiting at the bottom. He looked up at her, and something in his expression shifted surprise, then something warmer that made her pulse quicken. You look... He cleared his throat. The dress suits you. It was Martha's. I know. His voice was quiet. She would have wanted you to have it. They rode to the social in the ranch's finest buggy, the boys squirming with excitement between them. Ben chattered constantly about the food and games. Will worried about meeting new people. Tommy sat straight and still, playing the role of oldest son. The social was held at the church in Silver Creek, which had been transformed for the occasion with lanterns and decorations. Half the county seemed to be there. Ranchers and miners and townspeople all crowded together. Ellie felt eyes on her the moment they entered. She understood, of course. Samuel Thornton was one of the wealthiest men in the territory. His sudden marriage to an unknown woman from Kansas had undoubtedly sparked gossip. Now everyone wanted to see her to judge whether she was worthy of the position. Chin up, Samuel murmured. You belong here. Do I? You're my wife. That makes this your world now. His hand found the small of her back, a claiming gesture that wasn't lost on the watching crowd. Let them stare. You have nothing to prove to anyone. The evening was overwhelming. Ellie met dozens of people, ranchers and their wives, shopkeepers, the doctor, the preacher. Some were warm and welcoming. Others studied her with thinly veiled suspicion. So you're the woman who finally caught Samuel Thornton, one matron said, her smile sharp as a knife. How did you manage that? I nearly froze to death on his fence line. He took pity on me. The woman laughed, uncertain whether Ellie was joking. She's being modest. Samuel appeared at Ellie's elbow, his voice carrying a clear warning. My wife is a trained nurse and an excellent teacher. I'm fortunate to have her. The matron's smile faltered. How lovely. After she'd retreated, Ellie turned to Samuel. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. These people need to understand that you have my full support. Otherwise, they'll eat you alive. That's a cheerful image. Welcome to Colorado Territory Society. It's worse than the wolves. The evening wore on. Ellie danced with Samuel, a stiff, formal affair that nonetheless sent warmth spreading through her chest. She watched the boys play with other children, saw Tommy actually laughing at something, Will making a cautious friend, Ben being his usual irrepressible self. This is real, she thought. This is my life now. Late in the evening, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. A man had arrived, tall, well-dressed, with silver hair and cold eyes that swept the room like a hawk searching for prey. Samuel went still beside her. Who is that? Ezra Blackwood. Samuel's voice was flat. Owns the ranch to the south. We don't get along. Why not? Because he's been trying to buy my land for 15 years, and I keep refusing to sell. Samuel's hand tightened on her arm. He was also in love with Martha, before I came along. Before Ellie could process this, Blackwood had spotted them. He crossed the room with smooth confidence, his smile never reaching his eyes. Samuel, how lovely to see you, and this must be your new bride. He took Ellie's hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles that lingered too long. Mrs. Thornton, I've heard so much about you. Have you? Oh yes, the whole county's been talking about Samuel's mysterious new wife. Blackwood's eyes traveled over her dress, Martha's dress, and something knowing flickered in his expression. "I see you've settled in nicely." "Ezra," Samuel's voice was steel. "Is there something you need?" "Just offering congratulations. Marriage is such a beautiful institution." Blackwood smiled again, showing too many teeth. "I do hope this one lasts longer than expected. These ranching life can be so unpredictable." The threat was barely veiled. "We should be getting home," Samuel said tightly. "The children need their rest." They gathered the boys and left without lingering over farewells. The ride home was silent tension radiating from Samuel like heat from a stove. Finally, when the boys were in bed and the house was quiet, Ellie confronted him. What was that about with Blackwood? Samuel stood by the fire, his back to her. "Nothing you need to worry about." "He threatened you. Threatened us. I deserve to know why." "Ezra Blackwood has been a thorn in my side for 20 years. He wants this land, wants everything I have. He proposed to Martha before I did, and she chose me. He's never forgiven either of us for that." "But Martha's gone. And now you're here." Samuel turned, his face shadowed. "Wearing her dress, living in her house, raising her children. In Ezra's mind, you've taken everything that should have been his. That's insane." "Ezra's always been a bit insane, obsessive, controlling." Martha was terrified of him, said there was something wrong behind his eyes. Samuel's jaw tightened. "I've protected this ranch from him for years. I won't stop now." "What do you think he'll do?" "I don't know, but I won't let him hurt this family." Samuel's eyes found hers, and she saw something fierce there, something protective. "Any of this family." "Including me," Ellie thought. He means including me. The realization should have frightened her. Instead, it warmed something deep in her chest. "Then we'll face him together," she said. "That's what partners do." Samuel studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "Together." The word felt like a promise. The threat from Ezra Blackwood hung over the ranch like thunderclouds for weeks. Nothing happened at first. No confrontations, no incidents, just the uneasy feeling of being watched. Ellie caught riders on the distant hills, sometimes figures who disappeared when she looked directly at them. Samuel doubled the night patrols without explaining why. "You're worried," Ellie said one evening, finding him checking the locks on every door. "I'm cautious." "You're worried. There's a difference." Samuel paused, his hand on the bolt. "Blackwood's been quiet. Too quiet. He's planning something." "How do you know?" "Because I've known him for 20 years. He doesn't let go of grudges, he nurses them. Builds them up until they explode." Samuel's jaw tightened. "He waited 6 months after Martha married me before he made his first move. Tried to buy out my water rights, poison my relationship with suppliers. When that didn't work, he spread rumors that I'd cheated him in a land deal." "What happened?" "I survived, but I learned never to underestimate him." Samuel turned to face her. "I want you to keep the boys close to the house. No riding out to the far pastures, no wandering off alone." "Samuel, you're scaring me." "Good. Scared keeps you careful." The weeks passed in tense normalcy. Spring arrived, fully turning the brown fields green and filling the air with the smell of new growth. The ranch bustled with activity, calving season, planting the endless work of keeping a large operation running. Ellie threw herself into her duties, trying to ignore the worry that gnawed at her stomach. She taught the boys their lessons, managed the household, helped Hattie with the spring cleaning. At night, she lay awake listening for sounds that didn't belong. 2 months after the county social, the attack came. It happened on a night when Samuel was away, called to a neighboring ranch to help with a difficult calving. He'd taken Jake and 3 other hands with him, leaving the main house protected by a skeleton crew. "I'll be back by morning," he'd promised Ellie. "Keep the doors locked. Don't open them for anyone." "You're being paranoid." "I'm being careful." He'd hesitated at the door, then turned back and kissed her forehead, the same distant gesture from their wedding, but somehow different now. Warmer. "Stay safe." The boys went to bed at their usual time. Ellie read to Ben, checked on Will's latest book, exchanged a few words with Tommy. Everything was normal, peaceful routine. She was in the library when she heard the first gunshot. Ellie's blood froze. For one terrible second, she couldn't move, couldn't think. Then, training took over the instincts drilled into her during the war when gunfire meant incoming wounded. She ran. The hallway was dark, but she knew this house now knew every corner and doorway. She heard shouting from outside, more gunshots, the terrified whinny of horses. "Hattie!" Ellie burst into the kitchen. "What's happening?" Hattie stood at the window, her face gray. "Riders. 8, maybe 10 of them. They've shot Marcus, and they're coming for the house. The boys. Go, get them hidden. I'll barricade the kitchen." Ellie didn't waste time on questions. She flew up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Tommy's door first. She burst in without knocking. "Get your brothers. Now, we're hiding." Tommy's face was white, but he didn't argue. He was out of bed and moving before Ellie could say another word, his bare feet silent on the wooden floor. Will was awake, sitting up in bed with terror in his eyes. I heard. I know, sweetheart. Come with me. Quickly." Ben was harder. He was crying, confused, reaching for Ellie with shaking hands. "Mama, what's happening? Why are there loud noises?" "Bad men are here, baby, but we're going to be safe. Tommy's going to protect you." She gathered all 3 boys and half carried, half dragged them to the master bedroom. Martha's room still locked since her death. Ellie had found the key weeks ago tucked in a drawer of Sarah's vanity. The room smelled of dust and lavender, untouched for 4 years. Ellie didn't pause to feel strange about it. She pushed the boys toward the large wardrobe against the far wall. "Get inside, all 3 of you. Don't come out until I come get you or your father does, no matter what you hear." "Mama!" Ben's sobs tore at her heart. "I have to go help Hattie. Tommy, you're in charge. Keep your brothers quiet. Keep them safe." Tommy's jaw set with determination that broke and healed her heart simultaneously. "I will. I know you will." Ellie kissed each of them quickly. Ben's wet cheeks, Will's trembling forehead, Tommy's too serious face. "I love you, all of you." Then she closed the wardrobe doors and ran. Downstairs, the situation had deteriorated. Glass shattered somewhere at the front of the house. Men's voices, rough and cruel, echoed through the hallways. "Spread out! Find the woman and the brats." Ellie's stomach dropped. They were here specifically for her and the children. This wasn't a robbery, this was targeted. Blackwood. It had to be Blackwood. She found Hattie in the kitchen, clutching a heavy iron skillet like a weapon. The older woman's face was grim but determined. "How many inside?" "4 got in through the parlor. The others are dealing with the hands outside." Hattie's voice was steady. "I sent word to Jake before they cut us off, but help won't come fast enough." 4 men. Just 4. Ellie's mind raced. She'd nursed soldiers who'd fought off worse odds. She'd seen what determination and surprise could do. "Is there a gun?" "In the master's study. Bottom drawer of his desk." "Can you get to it?" "If you can distract them." Ellie nodded. She grabbed a lantern from the table, her hands steadier than they had any right to be. "Count to 30, then go." She didn't wait for Hattie's response. She stepped into the hallway, into the path of the approaching men. There were 3 of them, rough-looking, with bandanas covering their faces. They stopped when they saw her. A woman in a nightgown holding a lantern, looking for all the world like she'd stumbled out of bed to investigate a noise. Well, well. The leader stepped forward, his eyes traveling over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "You must be the new Mrs. Thornton. Boss said you were pretty." "Your boss sent you?" "Mr. Blackwood sends his regards. He wanted us to deliver a message to your husband." The man grinned. "Something about how he should have sold when he had the chance." "And what is the message?" "You. And those brats of his. We're taking you for a little trip. Make Thornton understand what happens when he defies Mr. Blackwood." Ellie's blood turned to ice. They weren't here to kill, they were here to kidnap. To use her and the boys as leverage. "The children are asleep upstairs," she said, her voice steady. "They're just children. They have nothing to do with your quarrel. They're Thornton's blood. That's enough." The man stepped closer. "Now, are you going to come quietly, or do we have to get rough?" Ellie thought about the boys hidden in Martha's wardrobe, about Tommy's determined face, Will's frightened eyes, Ben's tears. She thought about what these men would do if they found them. "Not while I'm breathing." "I'll come quietly," she said. "Just don't hurt anyone else." The leader relaxed, slightly satisfied. "Smart woman. Now," Ellie threw the lantern. It hit the floor between them and shattered, sending flames spreading across the wooden boards. The men stumbled back shouting, and Ellie ran. Not toward the study. Hattie would be there by now. Not toward the stairs that would lead them to the boys. She ran toward the back of the house, toward the mudroom, and the door that led outside. If she could get them to chase her, get them away from the house, the boys would be safe. Heavy footsteps pounded behind her. Curses, shouts, the crash of furniture being knocked aside. Ellie burst through the mudroom door into the cold night air. The yard was chaos. More men on horseback, ranch hands fighting back with whatever they could grab. Ellie saw old Marcus on the ground, clutching his arm, where blood seeped through his fingers. No time to stop. No time to help. She ran toward the barn, hoping to find a horse, a weapon, anything. Behind her, the men from the house spilled out into the yard. "Get her! Don't let her reach the barn!" Strong hands grabbed her from behind, yanking her backward. Ellie fought, scratching, kicking, biting, but the man was bigger, stronger. He wrapped an arm around her throat and squeezed until stars exploded in her vision. "Feisty little thing, ain't you?" His breath was hot and foul against her ear. "Boss said you had spirit. Said we could break it if we wanted." Ellie's vision was going dark. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't. A gunshot cracked through the night. The man holding her jerked and went still. Then he crumpled, taking Ellie down with him. She gasped for air, coughing, fighting to clear her vision. When she looked up, Samuel was there. He stood at the edge of the yard, still mounted, a rifle in his hands. His face was something she'd never seen before. Not cold, not distant, but blazing with fury so intense, it was almost frightening. "Get away from my wife." The remaining attackers scattered like rats. Some ran for their horses. Others tried to fight. It didn't matter. Samuel and the hands who'd ridden back with him were relentless, cutting them down with methodical efficiency. Within minutes, it was over. Ellie sat on the cold ground, surrounded by chaos, unable to move. Her throat throbbed where she'd been choked. Her hands shook so badly she couldn't lift them. Then Samuel was there, kneeling in front of her, his hands cupping her face. Ellie, look at me. Are you hurt?" "The boys." Her voice came out as a croak. "Upstairs. Hiding. I hid them." "Jake's checking. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. Just—" She couldn't finish. The terror she'd been holding back crashed over her like a wave, and she started to shake. Samuel pulled her against him, holding her tight while tremors racked her body. He didn't say anything, just held her steady and solid and safe. "I thought—" She choked on the words. "They were going to take us, use us against you. I couldn't let them find the boys, I couldn't—" "You were so brave, so damn brave." Samuel's voice was rough. "Hattie told me what you did, throwing the lantern, leading them away from the house. You risked yourself to protect my sons." "Our sons," she wanted to say, but she couldn't speak. "Papa, Mama." The voice came from the house. Ellie's head snapped up in time to see Tommy racing toward them, Will and Ben on his heels. Jake followed, looking relieved. "They're okay," Jake called. "Scared, but okay." The boys slammed into their parents with enough force to knock Ellie backward. She gathered them close, breathing in the smell of them, feeling their hearts pounding against hers. "Is the bad man gone?" Ben whimpered. Did Papa shoot him? The bad men are gone. Samuel's arm wrapped around all of them. They're never coming back. Mama was so brave, Tommy said, his voice cracking. She told us to hide, and she went to fight, like a soldier. Your mama is the bravest person I know. Samuel's eyes found Ellie's over the children's heads. Something passed between them. Gratitude, respect, something deeper that neither of them had words for yet. The next hours blurred together. The wounded were tended. The dead 3 of Blackwood's men were laid out in the barn to await the sheriff. The fire Ellie had started was contained before it could spread beyond the hallway. Samuel sent riders to town with messages for the law. The sheriff arrived before dawn, grim-faced and businesslike. Ezra Blackwood orchestrated this. His men, his orders. Samuel's voice was flat. They told my wife they were taking her and my children as a message, to make me understand what happens when I defy Mr. Blackwood. The sheriff's expression hardened. I'll need statements from everyone. The process took hours. Ellie told her story 3 times each repetition, making the terror feel more real and more distant simultaneously. Yes, they'd said Blackwood's name. Yes, they'd intended kidnapping. Yes, she'd fought back. Mrs. Thornton, the sheriff closed his notebook. What you did tonight was reckless as hell. Ellie lifted her chin. I protected my family. You could have gotten yourself killed. If I hadn't acted, they would have taken my children. I'll take those odds every time. Something like respect flickered in the sheriff's eyes. I reckon you would. By mid-morning, the ranch had settled into uneasy quiet. The boys, exhausted by terror and tears, had finally fallen asleep in Ellie's bed, all 3 of them refusing to let her out of their sight. Ellie sat beside them, watching their peaceful faces, unable to close her own eyes. Samuel found her there. You should rest. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see them. I feel that man's arm around my throat. Samuel sat down beside her on the bed, careful not to wake the children. It's called soldier's nerves. I had it after the war. The memories come back when you least expect them. Does it get better? Eventually. Not soon, but eventually. They sat in silence, watching their son sleep. The weight of the night hung between them, all the things that could have happened, all the ways it could have ended. I thought you were gone, Ellie said finally. When Jake sent word about the attack, I thought I was sure that I'd left you alone to face it, that you wouldn't get back in time, that I'd fail them. Her voice broke. That I wasn't strong enough. Samuel's hand found hers in the dim room. Ellie, you held off 4 armed men with nothing but a lantern and your wits. You hid 3 children so well that professionals couldn't find them. You nearly got yourself killed leading those men away from this house. His fingers tightened around hers. You were strong enough, more than strong enough. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway. Ellie looked at him. Really looked at him, and saw something new in his face. The coldness was gone. The distance had evaporated. What remained was raw and vulnerable and real. I thought I'd lost you, he said quietly. When I rode in and saw that man's arm around your throat, saw your face going white. He swallowed hard. I've buried 1 wife, Ellie. I can't bury another. I'm not dying anytime soon. You almost did. Because of me. Because Blackwood wanted to hurt me. That's not your fault. Isn't it? Samuel's voice was anguished. I brought you into this life. Married you, made you a target. If anything had happened to you or the boys. Nothing happened. We're all safe. Ellie shifted to face him fully. Samuel, listen to me. You gave me a home when I had none. You gave me children to love and a purpose to fight for. What happened tonight wasn't your fault, it was Blackwood's. He's the villain here, not you. I should have been here, Should have protected you. You can't be everywhere. That's why you have a family, so we can protect each other." Ellie reached up and touched his face, feeling the stubble, the warmth, the tension in his jaw. "I would fight for these boys 1,000 times over. I would throw 1,000 lanterns and run from 1,000 men. That's not your burden to carry. That's my choice, my love." The word slipped out before she could stop it. Love. Such a small word for something so enormous. Samuel went very still. "Ellie, I know this started as an arrangement. I know you married me for practical reasons, and I accepted for the same. But somewhere along the way—" She took a shaky breath. "Somewhere along the way, it became real. These boys are my sons. This house is my home. And you—" She couldn't finish. The words were too big, too frightening. Samuel's hand came up to cover hers where it rested on his cheek. "Me? You're not just my husband in name anymore. You matter to me. More than I expected, more than I know what to do with." The silence stretched between them, weighted with everything they'd been hiding from each other and themselves. Then Samuel leaned forward and kissed her. Not the distant kiss from their wedding. Not the forehead kisses that had become their habit. This was real Hungary, full of everything they'd been holding back. Ellie gasped against his mouth and felt him shudder in response. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Samuel's eyes were bright with emotion. "I've been falling in love with you for weeks," he said. "Fighting it every step of the way, telling myself it was wrong that I was betraying Martha. But tonight, when I thought I'd lost you, you didn't. I know. But the fear of it—" He pressed his forehead to hers. "I can't lose you, Ellie. Not because of the arrangement, not because of the boys. Because I love you. Because somewhere in the middle of this strange marriage, you became essential to me." Tears spilled down Ellie's cheeks. "I love you too. God help me. I love you." Samuel kissed her again, gentle this time, like a promise. Behind them, Ben stirred in his sleep, murmuring something about horses and bad dreams. "We should let them rest," Ellie whispered. "In a moment." Samuel held her close, his heart beating steady against hers. I need a minute. To believe this is real." They stayed there, as dawn light crept through the windows, husband and wife parents, watching their children sleep. The terror of the night was fading, replaced by something stronger. Hope, love, the fierce certainty that they would face whatever came next together. "What happens now?" Ellie asked finally. "With Blackwood?" "The sheriff is arresting him this morning. Those men talked, named him directly. He'll face charges for attempted kidnapping, assault, conspiracy." Samuel's jaw tightened. "He'll likely hang. And if he doesn't, then I'll deal with him myself." Samuel's voice was steel. "He threatened my family. No one threatens my family and walks away." "Our family," Ellie thought. "Not yours anymore. Ours. Whatever happens," she said, "we face it together. That's what we promised." "That's what we promised." Samuel kissed her hair. "And I keep my promises." The boys woke slowly, confused by their surroundings, then reassured by the sight of both parents beside them. Ben crawled into Ellie's lap with the boneless trust of a child who knew he was loved. Will pressed against Samuel's side, and Tommy. Tommy looked at both of them with something new in his two old eyes. "Is it over?" he asked quietly. "It's over," Samuel confirmed. "The bad men are gone. The sheriff is dealing with the man who sent them. You're all safe." "Mama was so brave." Will's voice was awed. "She saved us." "That's what mamas do," Ellie said, hugging Ben tighter. "They protect their families." "You're really our mama now," Tommy said. It wasn't a question. "Not just because you married Papa. Really." Ellie's heart swelled. "I've been your mama since the moment I agreed to stay. I just had to prove it." Tommy nodded slowly. Then for the first time since she'd arrived, he came to her voluntarily. He crossed the space between them and wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her shoulder. "I'm glad you didn't die," he whispered. "I'm really, really glad." "Me too, sweetheart." Ellie held him close, feeling his tears soak into her nightgown. "Me too." They stayed there, the five of them, tangled together in the morning light, a family forged in crisis and cemented by love. Outside the ranch was waking up damaged, but not defeated. The hands were already working to repair what the night had broken. But in that room, in that moment, nothing needed fixing. Everything was exactly as it should be. "Papa!" Ben's voice was sleepy. "I'm hungry. Can we have pancakes?" Samuel laughed, a real laugh, full and warm. "I think we can manage pancakes. With extra syrup. With whatever you want." They untangled slowly, reluctantly. Ellie caught Samuel's eye and saw the love there, open and unguarded. He smiled at her, a real smile, the kind she'd imagined he used to have before grief froze him. "Come on, Mrs. Thornton." He offered his hand. "Let's go feed our family." Ellie took it. Their family. That's what they were now. Not an arrangement, not a bargain. A family built from desperation, but sustained by something far stronger. Love freely chosen, and Ellie would never stop choosing it. The days after the attack passed in a strange blur of activity and quiet. The sheriff arrested Ezra Blackwood that same morning, dragging him from his fine house in chains, while half the county watched. The men who'd survived the assault talked freely, implicating their employer in every detail. Blackwood's protests of innocence fell on deaf ears. Too many witnesses, too much evidence, too long a history of harassment and threats. "He'll hang," Samuel told Ellie that evening. "The judge is coming through next week. Trial won't take long." "How do you feel about that?" Samuel was quiet for a moment. "Relieved. Guilty for being relieved. He was my neighbor for 20 years, Ellie. We weren't friends, but we weren't always enemies either. Somewhere along the way, his obsession with Martha, with this land, turned him into something monstrous." "That's not your fault." "I know. But I keep thinking if I'd sold him that water rights parcel 10 years ago, if I'd been less stubborn, then he would have wanted something else. Men like Blackwood don't stop wanting. They just find new things to covet." Ellie took his hand. "You protected your family. That's what matters." Samuel squeezed her fingers. "Our family." The word still felt new, precious. Ellie held it close like a treasure. The boys recovered from the trauma with the resilience of youth, though each processed it differently. Ben seemed to forget the terror within days, his natural sunshine burning away the shadows. Will had nightmares for a week, crawling into Ellie's bed at midnight, with wet cheeks and whispered fears. What if they come back? "They won't, sweetheart. The bad men are in jail. They can't hurt anyone anymore." "But what if other bad men come? Then your father and I will protect you. That's what parents do." Will would curl against her side, his small body gradually relaxing as she stroked his hair. By morning, the fear would be manageable again. Tommy's reaction was the most complex. He didn't have nightmares or crying fits. Instead, he became Ellie's shadow, following her through the house with quiet determination. "You don't have to watch over me," Ellie told him after 3 days of this. "I'm safe now." "I know." Tommy's jaw was set. "But I wasn't there when you needed help. I was hiding in the wardrobe while you fought. You were protecting your brothers. That's exactly what I needed you to do." "It didn't feel like enough." Tommy's voice cracked. "When we heard the gunshots, when Will started crying, I wanted to come help you. But you said stay, so I stayed, and I hated it. I hated being useless." Ellie knelt to his level, her heart breaking for this boy who carried too much weight. "Tommy, listen to me. You weren't useless. You were essential. If you'd come out of that wardrobe, those men might have found you. They might have taken you. Everything I did that night, throwing the lantern, running, fighting, I did, so they wouldn't find you three. You staying hidden is the reason I could fight at all." "Really? Really?" A soldier can't fight if she's worried about protecting people behind her. You kept your brothers safe, which let me keep all of us safe. We're a team, Tommy. Every member matters." Tommy absorbed this, his two old eyes searching her face. "Mama used to say that we were a team. Your mama was very wise. I think—" Tommy hesitated. "I think she would have liked you." The words hit Ellie like a gift she hadn't known she was hoping for. "You think so? You're brave like she was, and you love us like she did. Not the same way, but real. I can tell the difference now." Ellie pulled him into a hug, feeling his arms wrap around her in return. This boy who'd been so resistant, so wary, so afraid of letting anyone in, he was finally trusting her completely. "I love you, Tommy. You and your brothers. Nothing will ever change that." "I love you too." The words were muffled against her shoulder. "Mama. I love you too, Mama." It was the first time he'd called her that without prompting. Ellie held him tighter, tears streaming down her face. Later that night, after the boys were asleep, Samuel found her in the library. She was curled in her usual chair, but she wasn't reading. She was staring into the fire, lost in thought. "Tommy called me Mama today. Really called me that, like he meant it." Samuel settled into the chair beside her. "I heard. He told me at dinner, said he'd decided you'd earned it." "Earned it?" Ellie laughed softly. "I suppose almost dying does tend to prove one's commitment. You didn't almost die for them. You almost died protecting them. There's a difference, and Tommy knows it." Samuel's voice was warm. "You've changed this family, Ellie. Changed all of us. You've changed too. You're not the frozen man I married 3 months ago." "No, I suppose I'm not." Samuel was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about Martha." Ellie's heart tightened. What about her? About letting go? About what that means? He stood and moved to the fire, his back to her. "I've kept her room locked for 4 years. Kept everything exactly as she left it, like if I preserved it perfectly, some part of her would still be there." "That's understandable. Grief makes us do strange things." "It's not grief anymore. Not really. It's fear." Samuel turned to face her. "I was afraid that if I changed anything, I'd forget her. That if I let someone new into my life, into my heart, I'd be erasing her. But that's not true, is it?" "No, it's not. Martha's gone. She's been gone for 4 years, and she's not coming back. Keeping her room frozen doesn't preserve her memory. It just keeps me trapped in the past." Samuel took a breath. "I want to clear it out. Not throw away her things, the boys should have them when they're older. But pack them up, make space. Make room for the future." Ellie's throat tightened. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Samuel crossed to her and knelt beside her chair. "I want to do it with you if you're willing. I want you to help me say goodbye." The request was so raw, so vulnerable, that Ellie felt tears prickling again. "Of course I'll help. Whatever you need." They decided to do it the next morning, while the boys were occupied with lessons. Hattie took them to the kitchen to help bake bread, an activity that would keep them busy and provide a treat afterward. Samuel unlocked Martha's room with hands that trembled slightly. The door swung open to reveal a space suspended in time. Ellie stepped inside, carefully, feeling like an intruder despite the invitation. The room was beautiful, delicate wallpaper, elegant furniture. A large bed with a quilt that still held the faint impression of use. A woman's presence lingered in every detail. "She loved yellow," Samuel said quietly. Said it reminded her of sunshine. "She picked out all of this herself when we first built the house. It's lovely." It was her. Every inch of it. Samuel moved to the vanity where bottles and brushes still sat arranged as if their owner had just stepped out. "She used to sit here every morning brushing her hair. Said it was her thinking time." He picked up a silver-backed brush, running his fingers over the handle. "She was so full of life, Ellie. Made every room brighter just by being in it. When she died, it felt like all the light went out at once." "Tell me about her," Not how she died, how she lived. So Samuel talked while they worked. He told Ellie about meeting Martha at a church social, how she'd laughed at his clumsy attempts at conversation. About their wedding day when she'd worn a dress she'd sewn herself and looked more beautiful than anyone he'd ever seen. About the early years of the ranch when they'd had nothing but hope and hard work. She never complained, never. Even when things were hard, when we weren't sure we'd make it through the winter, she'd just smile and say we'd figure it out together. Samuel's voice roughened. Having Tommy changed her. She became this fierce, protective creature, said she'd fight bears for that boy. And she would have. I believe that completely. She sounds extraordinary. She was. But Ellie... Samuel set down the dress he'd been folding. She's not you. What I felt for her, what I feel for you, they're different things. I used to think love was a single note, one pure tone. But it's not. It's a whole symphony. Different melodies, different rhythms. Martha was one song. You're another. And loving you doesn't mean I've stopped hearing hers. Ellie moved to stand beside him. I never wanted to replace her, Samuel. I know I can't. You're not replacing her. You're adding to the music. He took her hands. Does that make sense? Or am I rambling like a fool? It makes perfect sense. Ellie squeezed his fingers. And for what it's worth, I think Martha would approve of the woman you chose. Tommy said the same thing. Then it must be true. That boy doesn't give approval lightly. They worked through the morning, carefully packing Martha's belongings into trunks and boxes. Her dresses, her jewelry, her personal effects, all preserved for the children to have someday. Samuel shared stories with each item, painting a picture of the woman Ellie would never meet, but somehow felt she knew. The last thing to pack was a leather journal found in the nightstand drawer. Samuel opened it, then went very still. What is it? Her diary. I didn't know she kept one. His eyes moved across the pages. These entries are from the end. The last weeks of her life. Ellie wanted to give him privacy, but he held out his hand. Stay, please. She stood beside him as he read, watching emotions cross his face. Pain, love, grief, and finally something that looked like peace. She knew she might not survive. The pregnancy was hard, she wrote about it. About her fears, her prayers, her hope that the baby would be healthy, even if... He swallowed hard. She wrote me a letter. In the last entry. You don't have to. I want to. Samuel's voice was steady now. She says, My dearest Samuel, if you're reading this, I didn't make it. Don't blame yourself. I know you will, but please try not to. What's coming isn't your fault. It's just how life works sometimes. Take care of our boys. Love them enough for both of us. And Samuel, don't close yourself off. Don't let grief turn you to stone. Find joy again. Find love again. The heart doesn't run out of room for people. It just grows bigger. I love you forever, but forever includes after I'm gone. Live, my darling. Please live. Silence filled the room. Ellie felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She knew, Samuel said wonderingly. She knew I'd freeze up, push everyone away. She knew me better than I knew myself. She loved you. That's what love does. It sees people clearly. 4 years. Samuel's voice cracked. 4 years I kept this room locked, kept myself locked, when she'd explicitly told me not to. When her last wish was that I'd find joy again. You couldn't have known. And Samuel, grief doesn't follow instructions. You couldn't have forced yourself to heal before you were ready. But I'm ready now. He closed the journal gently. I'm ready to live again, to love again, to be the man Martha believed I could be. He turned to Ellie, his eyes bright with tears, and something else, hope maybe. Resolution. I want to marry you again. We're already married. I know, but that wedding was about survival, about arrangements. I want a real wedding this time. One where we choose each other because we want to, not because we have to. One where the boys can celebrate with us, where the community can witness it, where we start fresh. Ellie's heart swelled. Samuel Thornton, are you proposing to me? I reckon I am. He took both her hands. Eleanor. Catherine Mercer Thornton, will you marry me? Not for practical reasons this time. Not for shelter or security. Will you marry me because you love me, and because I love you, and because we want to build a life together? Yes. The word came out choked with happy tears. Yes, I'll marry you, as many times as you ask. Samuel pulled her close and kissed her there in Martha's room, surrounded by boxes of memories. It should have felt wrong, but it didn't. It felt like permission, like blessing, like the past and future finally making peace. When they finally pulled apart, Samuel laughed a real laugh, full and warm. What? Ellie asked. Martha. She'd have opinions about this wedding, strong ones. She always said I had no sense of romance. Do you? None whatsoever. That's why I'm asking you and Hattie to plan everything. I'll just show up where you tell me to. That might be the wisest thing you've ever said. The news of the second wedding spread through the county like wildfire. Some people thought it was strange why marry again when you're already married, but most understood. This was the West where people did what they needed to do to survive, and celebrations were grabbed whenever possible. A love match was worth celebrating no matter how it had started. The boys were ecstatic. We get to be in the wedding. Ben bounced with excitement. Like a real wedding with cake and dancing. Exactly like that. And I can wear my good shirt. You can wear whatever you want. Will was more practical. Does this mean you're going to be our mama even more? I'm already your mama all the way. This is just a party to celebrate it. Tommy predictably had more complex thoughts. He found Ellie in the parlor the evening after the announcement. You're really staying. Forever. Forever, Ellie confirmed. And you love Papa. Not just because of the arrangement. I love your father more than I knew was possible. And I love you and your brothers with my whole heart. Tommy nodded slowly. Mama, the first mama, she would have wanted this. I know because she used to talk about what would happen if she died. She said Papa should find someone new, someone who could love us like she did. She said that to you? To all of us. Before Ben was born, when she was scared about the baby. She said we shouldn't be sad forever if something happened. That we should let new people love us because that's what she would want. Ellie's throat tightened. This woman she'd never met had somehow given her a blessing from beyond the grave. Your mama was very wise and very loving. I know. Tommy's eyes were wet, but he wasn't crying. I think she sent you to us. Does that sound crazy? It sounds like faith, and faith isn't crazy. It's brave. Tommy hugged her, then fierce and quick. I'm glad you're my mama now. Both of you. The first one and you. I'm glad too, sweetheart. More than you'll ever know. The wedding was planned for 4 weeks later, late spring, when the ranch was at its most beautiful. Hattie threw herself into preparations with enthusiasm that bordered on alarming. If we're doing this, we're doing it right, she declared. Mrs. Thornton, the first one, would haunt me if I let her husband remarry in a half-hearted celebration. It's just a small ceremony. Small doesn't mean sloppy. We'll have flowers, proper food, music. The whole county's invited. The whole county. They've been gossiping about you for months. Might as well give them something good to talk about. Ellie couldn't argue with that logic. The weeks before the wedding passed quickly. There was so much to do, invitations to send food, to plan a dress to make. Ellie had protested when Hattie suggested a new dress. I can wear the green silk. It's perfectly fine. That was Mrs. Thornton's dress, Martha's dress. You need your own. I don't have money for... The master does. And he specifically told me to make sure you have everything you need. Hattie's expression softened. Let him do this, Ellie. Let him give you a wedding you deserve. So Ellie had a dress made cream-colored silk with delicate embroidery, simple but elegant. When she tried it on for the final fitting, she barely recognized herself. You look beautiful, Hattie said quietly. Like a bride should look. I was a bride 3 months ago. That was different. That was survival. Hattie adjusted the collar with careful fingers. This is love. Anyone can see the difference. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. Ellie woke early, her stomach tight with nerves she hadn't expected. This was ridiculous. She was already married to Samuel, already living as his wife, already mother to his children. There was nothing to be nervous about. But somehow, standing in her room in her new dress, she felt like a different person than the desperate woman who'd collapsed against a fence post 5 months ago. "Mama!" Ben's voice came from the doorway. "You look like a princess again." "Thank you, sweetheart. Papa said I should tell you it's time. Everyone's waiting." Everyone, it turned out, meant most of the county. The ceremony was being held outside, and the yard was full of people, neighbors, townfolk, even some Ellie didn't recognize. They'd come to witness the wedding of Samuel Thornton and his unlikely bride. Samuel waited at the end of an aisle formed by chairs and wildflowers. He wore a dark suit that made his eyes stand out, and his expression when he saw Ellie made her heart stop. Love. Pure, uncomplicated love. The boys walked with her Tommy on one side, Will on the other, Ben skipping ahead with enthusiasm that couldn't be contained. They escorted her to their father, like the small escorts they were delivering her safely to the man who would be her husband in every way. "You're beautiful," Samuel murmured as she reached him. "You're not so bad yourself." The ceremony was simple. The preacher spoke words about love and commitment, about choosing each other freely and fully. When he asked if anyone objected, the crowd laughed. Who would object to such an obvious love match? "Do you, Samuel Josiah Thornton, take this woman to be your wife? To love and cherish in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer until death parts you?" "I do." Samuel's voice was steady and sure. "And do you, Eleanor Catherine Mercer, take this man to be your husband, to love and cherish in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer until death parts you?" Ellie looked at Samuel, at this man who'd pulled her from the snow, who'd offered survival and given love, who'd trusted her with his wounded heart and precious children. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Again." The preacher grinned. "Samuel, kiss your bride like you mean it this time." Samuel pulled her close, and their lips met in a kiss that said everything. Gratitude, joy, hope, passion, love. The crowd cheered, the boys whooped, and somewhere behind them, Hattie was crying happy tears. When they finally separated, Samuel kept his arm around her waist. "Well, Mrs. Thornton, how does it feel to be married to me?" "Exactly the same as yesterday, but somehow completely different." He laughed and kissed her again. The celebration continued for hours. There was food and dancing and more toasts than Ellie could count. People who'd been strangers 5 months ago now embraced her like family. Mrs. Henderson, who'd turned her away that first desperate day, apologized with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry I didn't help you when you came to my door. If I'd known, you couldn't have known, and everything worked out exactly as it should." The boys were exhausted by evening, overstimulated from cake and excitement. Ellie helped Hattie get them to bed, listening to their sleepy chatter about the best wedding ever. "Mama," Ben murmured as she tucked him in, "I love you." "I love you too, baby. Forever. Forever and always." When she returned downstairs, the party had wound down. A few lingering guests were saying their goodbyes, and Samuel stood on the porch, watching the stars emerge. She joined him, slipping her hand into his. "What are you thinking about? How strange life is. How the worst moment, losing Martha, led somehow to the best moment. Finding you. I don't think I'd call nearly freezing to death a good thing. It brought you to me. That makes it good in my book." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars multiply across the darkening sky. "I never thanked you," Samuel said finally. "For what? For saying yes. That first day when I proposed like a lunatic, when I offered a cold arrangement with nothing romantic about it. You could have refused. Probably should have. I didn't have many options. You had your pride, your dignity, your principles. You could have walked back into that storm rather than accept such a mercenary proposal. But you stayed. I stayed because I wanted to survive. I kept staying because I wanted to live. And now I stay because there's nowhere else I'd rather be. Ellie turned to face him. You're my home, Samuel. You and the boys. This isn't about survival anymore. It's about choice. And I choose you. Every day I choose you. Samuel's answer was a kiss, slow, deep, full of promises. Let's go inside, he murmured against her lips. The guests are gone, and we have a wedding night to attend to. Ellie felt heat rise in her cheeks. In 3 months of marriage, they'd shared nothing more than kisses. The distance they'd agreed to initially had softened, but they'd both been waiting for what she hadn't been sure. Now she knew. They'd been waiting for this, for a wedding that meant something, for a beginning that was truly theirs. Lead the way, husband. Samuel's grin was wicked and warm. He took her hand and led her inside into the house that had become their home, into the life they'd built together from nothing. This night would be different from all the others. This night they would truly become husband and wife in every way. And tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new chapters in their story. But tonight was for them. For love chosen, not forced. For hope earned, not borrowed. For the family they'd made together. The months that followed the wedding were the happiest Ellie had ever known. She woke each morning in Samuel's arms, marveling at how natural it felt. The distance that had defined their early arrangement had dissolved completely, replaced by an intimacy that grew deeper with each passing day. They talked late into the night about everything, their pasts, their hopes, their fears. They laughed at the boys' antics and worried together when illness struck. They were partners in every sense of the word. I never imagined this, Ellie confessed one morning watching the sunrise from their bedroom window. When I accepted your proposal, I thought the best I could hope for was tolerance, maybe companionship if I was lucky. And now I can't imagine my life without you. Any of you. Samuel pulled her close. Neither can I. You've become the center of everything, Ellie. The boys orbit around you like planets around the sun. Even Hattie says the house feels different, warmer, more alive. Hattie says that because she has less work to do now that I've taken over half her responsibilities. Hattie says it because it's true. Samuel kissed her hair. You brought us back to life, all of us. The boys continued to thrive. Tommy's seriousness gradually softened, replaced by a quiet confidence that suited him better than the weight he'd been carrying. He still took his responsibilities as oldest brother seriously, but he also let himself play now, roughhousing with Will, teaching Ben to ride sometimes, even joining in the silly games Ellie invented for rainy days. Mama, watch this. He'd come running to show her a new trick on horseback, eager for her approval. Be careful, sweetheart. I am Papa taught me. Will blossomed most dramatically. The anxious, nervous child who'd jumped at shadows had transformed into a thoughtful boy with a wicked sense of humor. He still preferred books to rough play, still worried more than his brothers, but the fear that had haunted him was fading. Mama, do you think I could be a writer someday? He asked one afternoon. I think you could be anything you want to be. Tommy says writers don't make money. Tommy doesn't know everything. Besides, there are different kinds of wealth. If writing makes you happy, that's worth more than gold. Will had hugged her fiercely. I'm going to write a book about you someday. About how you came to us. That would be quite a story. The best story. Because it's true. Ben remained his irrepressible self-sunshine in human form, constantly in motion, asking endless questions about everything. But even he had changed, grown more secure in the knowledge that his family was permanent. Mama, are you going to be here forever? Forever and always, baby. Even when I'm old like Papa. Papa isn't old. He has gray hair. Don't tell him that. You'll hurt his feelings. Ben had giggled and run off to tell his father exactly that, and Ellie had listened to Samuel's mock outraged protests with a smile. Summer turned to autumn, and with the changing leaves came a change in Ellie herself. She noticed it gradually fatigue that couldn't be explained by her usual work queasiness in the mornings, a sensitivity to smells she'd never experienced before. She knew what it meant. She'd seen it often enough as a nurse. But she waited to be sure, waited until the signs were unmistakable before telling Samuel. "I need to speak with you," she said one evening after the boys were in bed. Privately. Samuel's expression flickered with concern. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Quite the opposite, actually." Ellie took his hands, her heart racing. "Samuel, I'm going to have a baby." Silence. Complete, stunned silence. Then Samuel's face transformed surprise, giving way to joy, joy tinged with something darker. Fear. "Are you... How do you... You're certain?" "I'm certain. The doctor confirmed it today. Sometime in late spring we'll have another child." Samuel pulled her into his arms, holding her tight enough to make breathing difficult. She felt him trembling and understood without words what he was feeling. "I'm not Martha," she said softly. "This isn't the same." I know it isn't." But his voice shook. Just when she was pregnant with Ben. "I'm strong and healthy. The doctor says everything looks normal. We'll be careful. We'll be prepared. But Samuel..." Ellie pulled back to look at him. "We can't live in fear of what might happen. That's not living at all." "I know." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I know. It's just the thought of losing you." "You won't lose me. I have too much to live for now." Samuel kissed her, then gentle and desperate and full of complicated emotion. "A baby. We're having a baby. We're having a baby." The news spread through the household like wildfire. Hattie cried happy tears and immediately began planning. Jake offered gruff congratulations, and the boys reacted with characteristic individuality. "I want a sister," Ben announced. "There's too many boys in this house." "I don't care if it's a boy or girl," Will said thoughtfully, "as long as it's healthy." Tommy said nothing at first. He found Ellie later when the others had dispersed. "Are you scared?" "A little. Childbirth is always risky. But I have a good doctor, and I'm healthy." "Mama died having a baby." "I know, sweetheart. And I know this must be bringing up hard memories for you." Tommy's eyes were wet. "I don't want you to die." "I don't want to die either. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure I don't." Ellie gathered him close. "But Tommy, even if something happened to me, which it won't, you would be okay. You have your father, your brother's Hattie. You're not alone anymore." "It's not the same. You're my mama now. I don't want a different one. You won't have a different one. I'm not going anywhere." Tommy held on to her for a long time, this boy who'd lost so much and was terrified of losing more. Ellie stroked his hair and made silent promises she intended to keep. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through fall and winter. Ellie took precautions, resting when she was tired, letting Hattie take over more of the household work, following the doctor's every instruction. Samuel hovered anxiously, checking on her constantly. "I'm fine, Samuel. The baby's fine. You're going to worry yourself into an early grave." "I can't help it. Every time you look tired, every time you wince." "I wince because your child is kicking me in the ribs. That's normal." Despite his fears, Samuel was also deeply engaged in the pregnancy. He talked to Ellie's growing belly, held long conversations with their unborn child about the ranch, the horses, the brothers waiting to meet them. "You're going to love it here," he'd murmur against her stomach. "Your mama's the best mother in the territory, and your brothers are going to teach you everything important." "Important according to whom?" Ellie asked wryly. "According to them. which means you'll know everything about horses' books and how to make trouble by the time you're 5. The boys took to referring to the baby as our baby, including themselves in the anticipation. Ben insisted on talking to Ellie's stomach too, telling the baby about his adventures and promising to teach them to ride. Maybe wait until they're born first, Ellie suggested. I know Mama, but I want them to know my voice. Will wrote a letter to his future sibling carefully composed and sealed to be opened when they were old enough to read. He wouldn't tell anyone what it said. It's private, between me and them. Tommy's preparation was more practical. He organized the nursery, helped Hattie wash and fold tiny clothes, made sure everything was ready. You're going to be a wonderful big brother, Ellie told him. I'm already a big brother. To a baby, I mean. It's different. Babies need more patience, more gentleness. I can be gentle. Tommy's jaw set. I'll protect them, just like I protect Ben and Will. I know you will, sweetheart. Spring arrived slowly, winter loosening its grip inch by inch. The snow melted, the creek swelled, and Ellie grew larger by the day. The doctor estimated mid-April for the birth, and as the date approached, tension in the household ratcheted higher. Samuel barely slept. He found excuses to stay close to the house, delegating more and more ranch work to Jake. The boys were subdued, picking up on adult anxiety, even if they didn't fully understand it. It's going to be fine, Ellie kept saying. Everything is going to be fine. She prayed she was right. The baby decided to arrive on a stormy night in late April. Ellie woke to a pain so sharp it stole her breath, and she knew immediately what was happening. Samuel, wake up. He was alert instantly. Is it time? It's time. Get the doctor. The next hours blurred together in a haze of pain and fear and determination. The doctor arrived calm and competent. Hattie was a steady presence, holding Ellie's hand, offering encouragement. Samuel paced the hallway like a caged animal, forbidden from the birthing room by convention, but unable to stay away. You're doing well, Mrs. Thornton, the doctor said. Baby's positioned perfectly. Everything looks good. But Ellie knew better than most how quickly that could change. She'd seen it during the war situations that looked perfect one moment and turned deadly the next. She pushed the fear aside and focused on the work at hand. Hours passed. The pain crescendoed and retreated in waves. Ellie screamed, cursed, gripped Hattie's hand hard enough to bruise. Almost there, the doctor encouraged. One more push, one more. Ellie gathered every ounce of strength she had left and pushed. And then a cry, high and thin and perfect. It's a girl, the doctor announced. A healthy baby girl. Relief crashed over Ellie like a wave. She fell back against the pillows, sobbing with exhaustion and joy, as the doctor placed a small, squirming bundle against her chest. Hello, little one, she whispered. We've been waiting for you. The baby blinked up at her with unfocused eyes, her tiny face scrunched in displeasure at the bright, loud world she'd entered. She had a shock of dark hair like Samuel's, and the delicate features of a porcelain doll. The door burst open. Samuel stood there wild-eyed and disheveled. I heard crying, is she, are you? We're fine. Ellie smiled through her tears. Come meet your daughter. Samuel crossed the room in 3 strides and fell to his knees beside the bed. His hands trembled as he reached out to touch the baby's cheek, his face a mix of awe and terror and overwhelming love. She's so small. They all start that way. She's perfect. Samuel's voice broke. You're perfect. You're both. He couldn't finish. He pressed his forehead to Ellie's, tears streaming down his face. I told you I wasn't going anywhere. I know. I know you did. He kissed her, gentle and grateful. I love you. God, Ellie, I love you so much. I love you too. Now go get the boys before they break down the door. The boys had been waiting downstairs with Jake practically vibrating with anxiety. When Samuel appeared with the news, they abandoned all pretense of calm. Can we see? Is the baby here? Is Mama okay?" Samuel led them upstairs, cautioning quiet, and they filed into the bedroom like solemn little pilgrims. Ben's eyes went huge. "She's so tiny." "You were that tiny once?" Ellie said. "No way." "Yes way. Even smaller, actually." Will hung back uncertain. "Are you really okay, Mama? You look tired." "I am tired. Having babies is hard work. But I'm fine, sweetheart. Come closer. You can hold her if you want." Will's face lit up. He climbed carefully onto the bed and let Ellie guide his arms into position, cradling his new sister like she was made of glass. "She's looking at me," he breathed. "She sees me." "She does. That's one of her brothers. She's going to need all of you to teach her everything." Tommy hadn't spoken. He stood at the foot of the bed, his expression unreadable. "Tommy, don't you want to meet your sister?" "I was scared," he said quietly. "The whole time I was scared you'd—" "I know. Come here." Tommy climbed onto the bed on Ellie's other side, and she wrapped an arm around him, pulling him close. "I'm still here. I told you I would be." "I know." His voice was thick. I love you, Mama. I didn't want to lose you." "You haven't lost me. You won't lose me. I'm going to be here for a long, long time watching all of you grow up." Ellie kissed his forehead. "Now look at your sister. Isn't she beautiful?" Tommy looked. Something in his expression softened. "She is. She looks like you. She has your father's hair. But your face, she's going to be stubborn." "Hey," Samuel protested mildly. "I'm standing right here." "It's not an insult, Papa. Mama's stubbornness is her best quality." They all laughed. Even the baby seemed to respond to the sound, making a soft cooing noise that melted every heart in the room. "What are we going to name her?" Ben asked. Ellie and Samuel exchanged glances. They'd discussed this considered options, but nothing had felt right. "We were thinking," Ellie began. "Martha Joy," Samuel finished. "After your first mother who would have loved her. And Joy because that's what she's brought us." Tommy's eyes filled with tears. "You'd name her after Mama. Your mother was an extraordinary woman. She'd want to be part of this family even now. This way she will be." "Martha Joy," Will repeated softly. "I like it." "Martha Joy Thornton," Ellie confirmed. "Our daughter, your sister." The room fell into peaceful silence. The whole family gathered together around the newest member. Outside, the storm was clearing, the first rays of dawn breaking through the clouds. A new day. A new beginning. A family complete. The months that followed were chaotic and wonderful. Martha Joy, they called her Joy for short, was a demanding baby, determined to make her presence known. She had her father's stubbornness and her mother's fierce spirit, and she wrapped every member of the household around her tiny finger within weeks. "She's going to be trouble," Hattie predicted fondly. "Mark my words." "She's already trouble," Samuel agreed, bouncing her to quiet her crying. "But the good kind." The boys doted on their sister. Ben was endlessly patient, entertaining her with silly faces and songs. Will read to her every night, even though she couldn't understand a word. And Tommy was her fiercest protector, hovering nearby whenever strangers were present. "He's going to be worse than you," Ellie told Samuel. "I'm not overprotective." "You checked the locks 3 times last night." "That's not overprotective. That's cautious." "Mm-hmm." Their first anniversary, the real one, the one that counted, fell on a perfect late spring day. Samuel had been mysterious about his plans, refusing to tell Ellie anything. "Just trust me. The last time you said that, I ended up married to you. And that turned out well, didn't it?" He led her to a spot overlooking the ranch where a small structure had been built without her knowledge, a gazebo delicate and beautiful, already covered with climbing roses. "When did you... how..." "Jake and the boys helped. We've been working on it for weeks." Samuel led her inside. Look! On the inner wall, words had been carved into the wood. Ellie stepped closer to read them. Here stands Eleanor, who came in winter and brought spring, who accepted shelter and gave home, who married from need and loved from choice, forever our heart, forever our family, forever our joy. Ellie's vision blurred with tears. Samuel, I wanted you to have something permanent, something that would last. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. You changed everything, Ellie. You saved us all. I wanted there to be a record of that. I didn't save anyone. You did. You saved Tommy from becoming a bitter old man at 10. You saved Will from drowning in fear. You saved Ben from growing up without knowing what a mother's love feels like. And you saved me. His voice cracked. You saved me from spending the rest of my life frozen half dead, too afraid to love again. Ellie turned in his arms. You saved me too. You gave me a home when I had none, a family when I was alone, a purpose when I'd lost everything. We saved each other, Samuel. That's how it works. Partners. Partners. Always. They stood there as the sun set, holding each other, watching their land turn golden in the evening light. Do you ever think about that first day? Samuel asked. When you collapsed at my gate. Sometimes. It feels like a lifetime ago. It was. We were different people then. You were desperate and I was frozen. He pressed a kiss to her hair. Look at us now. Ellie looked. At the house below where their children were playing. At the barn where the horses grazed. At the land that stretched in every direction, vast and green and full of promise. We built this, she said. Together. We did. And we'll keep building. More children. If you want. But I meant more than that. More life. More love. More everything. From the house came the sound of laughter. Ben chasing Will Tommy, calling for them to be careful. Joy's delighted squeal as someone picked her up. That's the sound of our family, Samuel said. I never thought I'd hear it again. Thought the house would be quiet forever. Houses should never be quiet. They should be full of noise and chaos and love. Ours certainly is. And it always will be. They walked back to the house, hand in hand, to the life they'd built from nothing. The boys came running to meet them, Joy in Tommy's arms, all of them talking at once about the game they'd invented, and the bugs they'd found, and whether they could have cake for dinner. Samuel looked at his family, his wife, his sons, his daughter, and felt something crack open in his chest. Not pain this time, not grief, something else. Completeness. Finally, after all the loss and the fear and the frozen years, completeness. I love you, he said to Ellie over the chaos. I love you too. She kissed his cheek. Now go settle your sons before they tear the house down. The years would bring more challenges, more changes, more joy and sorrow intertwined. Tommy would grow into a fine young man. Will would become a writer. Ben would inherit the ranch. Joy would break hearts across the territory before finding someone worthy of hers. And through it all, Samuel and Ellie would stand together, partners in everything. But that night, as the family gathered around the dinner table, as laughter echoed through the house that had once held only silence, as Joy reached for her mother with chubby hands, and Ben told a terrible joke that made everyone groan. Samuel caught Ellie's eye across the table. She smiled at him, that smile that had saved him, transformed him, brought him back to life. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that everything he'd endured had been worth it. Because love in the end was not about the pain it could cause or the fear it inspired. Love was about choosing someone every single day, despite the risk. Love was about building something from nothing and holding on to it with everything you had. Ellie had come to him frozen and desperate, accepting a cold proposal because it was her only option. She had stayed because she chose to. She had loved because her heart demanded it. And in doing so, she had given him everything he didn't know he needed. A home, a family, a future. a reason to live. The woman who needed shelter had become his shelter. The stranger had become his heart. The practical arrangement had become the greatest love story he would ever know. And that Samuel thought as he watched his family laugh and argue and love each other was the only ending that mattered. Not the end, really, just the beginning of forever.